Ethan never expected his 2.5-year relationship to end with a single, emotionless text message. He stared at the screen, rereading the words as if they might somehow change. But they didn't. Less than a day later, Jenna posted a dramatic update online, claiming she had finally freed herself from a toxic man. The comments poured in, praising her courage and celebrating her so-called awakening. Ethan didn't argue or defend himself. Instead, he left a calm congratulations under her post and tagged every significant person in her life. Her parents, her sister, her boss, even her pastor. Within minutes, notifications exploded across her profile. People started asking questions she couldn't ignore. And that single comment from Ethan quietly lit the fuse for a chain reaction that neither of them could stop. Ethan had never been the type to dig through someone's phone or chase after suspicions, but the breakup and Jenna's sudden spiritual theatrics kept nagging at him. Something didn't add up. And when the truth finally surfaced, it hit him harder than the breakup itself. A mutual friend slipped up during a casual conversation, mentioning that Jenna had been hanging out with a guy named Marcus long before she announced her so-called liberation. Ethan didn't want to believe it. He tried to convince himself that it was just a misunderstanding. But the timelines didn't lie. Late-night photos, tagged locations, and comments left on old posts started forming a pattern he could no longer ignore. 3 months. For 3 entire months, while still calling Ethan her soulmate, Jenna had been sneaking around with Marcus. The betrayal didn't come with fireworks or screaming. It arrived quietly, like a puzzle snapping into place. So when Jenna posted her dramatic, spiritual awakening update, Ethan felt something shift inside him. He wasn't interested in revenge, but he also wasn't going to carry the blame for something he didn't do. He opened the comment box beneath her post, typed a polite message congratulating her, and then started tagging the people who deserved to know the truth. Her boss, who frequently praised her for professionalism. Her parents, who adored Ethan and believed their daughter was finally settling down. Her pastor, who once counseled them on building trust and commitment. He didn't write anything inflammatory. He didn't expose her outright. He simply tagged them, and that alone was enough to send shockwaves through Jenna's calm, curated facade. Within minutes, notifications exploded. Her mom asked what was going on. Her boss responded with a confused question mark. Her pastor politely inquired if everything was all right. And Jenna, who had been basking in admiration from her followers, suddenly froze. She tried to delete the comment, but screenshots were already spreading. One person scrolled back through her older posts and found a photo she had forgotten to archive, an intimate body shot of Jenna and Marcus at a bar 3 months prior. Another follower connected the dates and called her out publicly. The comments section transformed from a congratulatory parade into a battlefield of accusations, questions, and disbelief. Jenna panicked and messaged Ethan, demanding that he take down his comment. He didn't. She insisted that he was sabotaging her, that he was creating drama out of spite. But Ethan simply responded that he hadn't lied, hadn't exaggerated, and hadn't exposed anything she hadn't already posted herself. People kept digging. Every old photo, every cryptic caption, every unusual gap in her timeline began resurfacing. And for the first time since their breakup, Jenna realized that the truth she had tried so hard to hide was slipping out of her control. It was Ethan who exposed her. It was her own trail of secrets, finally catching up. Jenna's family had always believed she was the responsible one, the steady one, the one who made good decisions. So when Ethan's quiet comment pulled the curtain back, the shock that rippled through her household was immediate and intense. Her mother called her first. Not to comfort her, not to defend her, just to ask a single trembling question. Is it true? Jenna tried to dodge it, blaming misunderstandings and accusing Ethan of attacking her online, but her mother wasn't convinced. She had seen the resurfaced photos. The dates spoke for themselves. Then her sister, Kelly, jumped in. Unlike their mother, Kelly had always been the more perceptive one. She had noticed Jenna's late nights, her sudden changes in mood, and the vague excuses she kept offering during family gatherings. Now everything made sense to her. She confronted Jenna with a coldness Jenna had never heard before. While the family drama was unfolding, her professional life began crumbling in parallel. Her boss, a woman who took company image seriously, had been tagged in Ethan's comment and had personally clicked on every link and photo the internet was suddenly resurfacing. Within hours, Jenna received an unexpected email requesting her presence in a disciplinary meeting. The wording was formal, but the tone was unmistakably disappointed. During that meeting, her boss asked her to explain the pictures that showed her in compromising positions with Marcus, while still being in a public relationship. The company valued integrity and public conduct, especially from employees who represented them at community events. Jenna tried to spin it as a personal matter, something unrelated to her work, but the leadership team saw it differently. They reminded her that her actions reflected on the company, especially now that her scandal was trending online. And just when she thought it couldn't get worse, the church board reached out. Her pastor, who had been tagged as well, had seen the photos and the comments. He invited Jenna to attend a meeting, for clarity. The phrasing alone made her stomach twist. At the church office, she sat across from several leaders who had known her since she was a teenager. They weren't angry, they were disappointed. They asked about the infidelity, the misleading spiritual posts, the sudden claims of emotional abuse, and the attention-seeking behavior that contradicted the teachings she publicly supported. Jenna tried to shift blame onto Ethan again, but the board had already seen the timeline of events. It didn't align with her story. Meanwhile, Ethan's phone kept lighting up with messages from people asking whether he was okay. Some offered support. Some apologized for believing Jenna's initial post. But Ethan stayed quiet. He refused to feed the fire. Jenna, however, was losing control rapidly. Her own relatives were questioning her. Her workplace was watching her. Her church was scrutinizing her behavior. The drama wasn't just online anymore. It had leaked into every corner of her life, and she felt the walls closing in. For the first time, Jenna realized the consequences weren't coming from Ethan. They were coming from everyone she had once counted on, because they were all seeing the truth for themselves. Jenna showed up at Ethan's doorstep on a rainy evening, makeup smeared, hair disheveled, and breathing like she'd sprinted across town. She didn't wait for him to invite her in. She pushed past him, burst into the living room, and collapsed onto the couch in a shaking heap. The moment she opened her mouth, she wasn't apologizing. She was demanding. She insisted that Ethan get online immediately and clear her name. She claimed that everything spiraling around her was because of him, because of that single comment he left. She said he had ruined her reputation, destroyed her job, embarrassed her family, and turned the internet against her. Ethan stood there in disbelief. He hadn't posted screenshots. He hadn't written accusations. All he did was tag people. The truth came from her own actions, her own photos, her own contradictions. But Jenna refused to acknowledge any of that. She pointed at the viral threads, crying harder every time she scrolled through a comment calling her out. She said he needed to fix this, that he was responsible for restoring her dignity, and that if he didn't do it voluntarily, she would have no choice but to involve lawyers. Ethan remained calm, even as she raised her voice. He told her the only reason people were talking was because they saw evidence she had put online herself. He reminded her that she cheated for 3 months, not 3 days. He said the truth didn't disappear just because she was uncomfortable facing it. That only made her angrier. She began spinning every excuse she could reach for stress, confusion, emotional vulnerability, spiritual crisis, misunderstandings. anything that placed the blame anywhere except on her choices. But the turning point came when Ethan mentioned Marcus's wife. Jenna froze. She didn't know Ethan had already spoken to people who knew Marcus personally. She didn't know that Marcus was married the entire time she was sneaking around with him. And she definitely didn't expect Ethan to reveal that Marcus's wife was already aware and furious. The color drained from Jenna's face. For the first time, the panic wasn't performative. It was real. A few hours later, her entire family arrived unannounced at Ethan's apartment. Her mother demanded answers. Her father accused Ethan of humiliating their daughter. Kelly, however, stayed silent, watching, listening, connecting dots faster than anyone else in the room. Ethan stood alone but unfazed. He told them what he had told Jenna. He didn't lie. He didn't exaggerate. He didn't expose anything that Jenna hadn't already exposed through her own posts and behavior. Kelly finally stepped forward and admitted she had seen messages on Jenna's phone weeks ago. She backed Ethan's version. She said Jenna had been hiding things from everyone, not just Ethan. The room fell silent. Jenna burst into fresh tears, insisting she was the victim, pleading for sympathy, begging her family to stand with her. But this time, even they hesitated. The moment they left, Ethan closed the door and felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. The chaos wasn't his. It never had been his. He had simply spoken one honest truth, and Jenna's entire web of lies had collapsed under its own weight. Jenna disappeared from social media for 2 days after the confrontation at Ethan's apartment, but when she returned, she came back with theatrics bigger than ever. She opened with a long emotional post claiming she had suffered severe psychological abuse during her relationship and needed help recovering from the damage. Within minutes, she launched a GoFundMe campaign asking for financial support so she could heal and rebuild her life. The page was dramatic, filled with exaggerated claims and vague accusations. She never mentioned Ethan by name, but it was obvious who she was blaming. Her followers, still confused and divided, didn't know which version to believe. But the internet did what the internet always does. People started digging. Screenshots resurfaced showing Jenna happily posting with Ethan during the same months she claimed to have been emotionally tormented. Photos with Marcus reappeared with dates that contradicted her entire narrative. Comment threads formed analyzing every inconsistency, and slowly, people began turning against her. The situation escalated when her sister, Kelly, finally had enough. She wrote a lengthy public post outlining the timeline from her perspective, attaching screenshots of texts Jenna had sent during the months of her affair. There were messages bragging about going out with Marcus, jokes about lying to Ethan, and even a photo Jenna had taken outside Marcus's apartment. Kelly apologized to Ethan directly in her post, saying she couldn't let her sister ruin someone else's life to protect herself. That blew everything wide open. Jenna's GoFundMe began receiving comments questioning her story. Donors demanded refunds. People accused her of manipulating supporters for money. Within a day, the campaign was reported so many times that the platform froze it for review. But the biggest collapse happened on TikTok. Jenna had always considered herself a kind of wellness influencer, posting daily affirmations and vague spiritual content. Now every video she uploaded was flooded with comments calling out her lies. Users stitched her old clips, dissecting her statements, matching them with screenshots, and exposing every inconsistency. Some creators made sarcastic parodies, reenacting her dramatic posts. Others simply laid out the evidence chronologically, showing exactly where her story fell apart. One viral creator even broke down her GoFundMe description alongside her actual messages to Marcus, captioning the comparison with 2 different universes. The video reached hundreds of thousands of views overnight. Jenna tried going live to defend herself, crying into the camera and insisting she was misunderstood. But the chat was brutal, People spammed questions she couldn't answer. Others demanded she take accountability. Some simply posted clown emojis until she abruptly ended the stream. Meanwhile, Ethan stayed silent through all of it. He didn't respond to comments. He didn't join discussions. He didn't explain or justify anything. His absence only made the internet more certain that Jenna was lying, because silence didn't help her narrative. It destroyed it. By the end of the week, Jenna's online presence had crumbled. Her followers plummeted. Her brand deals disappeared. Every attempt to rebuild her image only made things worse. The truth had finally caught up, and this time, there was no one left to blame but herself. Jenna's desperation reached a new peak the moment she realized her GoFundMe had been frozen and her online credibility was collapsing. She convinced herself that the only solution left was to confront Ethan publicly, as if doing so would somehow shift the narrative back in her favor. So she marched to his workplace, still trembling from panic, clutching a folder full of printed screenshots she believed would prove her innocence. When she arrived, she stormed through the lobby and demanded to see him. The receptionist tried to calm her down, but Jenna spoke over everyone, claiming Ethan had defamed her, and she needed to serve him with warnings. Security appeared within minutes. Ethan, notified by his manager, stepped out briefly, but one look at Jenna's state told him everything he needed to know. She yelled accusations across the room, insisting that he was destroying her life. She threatened lawsuits, reporters, restraining orders, anything she could think of in the moment. Employees began gathering around the hallway, whispering, recording, some recognizing her from the viral videos. Humiliation washed over her, but she kept pushing forward until security escorted her out of the building. That should have been the end of it, but Jenna refused to accept defeat. The next week, Ethan received a letter from a supposed law office. The formatting looked suspicious. The text was riddled with typos. When he searched the attorney's name, the only result was a Facebook page for a motivational life coach. It was clear Jenna had paid someone unlicensed, or maybe printed the letter herself, to intimidate him. Ethan ignored it, but Jenna continued spiraling. Determined to reclaim control, she organized a healing ritual at a public park. She announced it on her remaining social platforms, saying she would be releasing all toxic energy and reclaiming her power. A few loyal followers showed up with candles, crystals, and confusion. Jenna stood at the center, wearing flowing white clothes and holding a lighter in one hand and a printed photo of Ethan in the other. She began chanting affirmations loudly, drawing the attention of joggers, families, and anyone walking by. Then, in a dramatic flourish, she set Ethan's photo on fire and raised it toward the sky like she was summoning something. But the moment the ashes fell, park security approached her. They asked for her permit to burn materials in a public space. She argued that it was a spiritual ceremony. They explained that fire hazards weren't spiritual exceptions. Unfortunately for Jenna, one of the responding officers was Ethan's cousin. When he recognized her, his face dropped into a tired expression that suggested he had been expecting something like this. Jenna panicked, tried to run, slipped on wet grass, and crashed into the edge of the park's fountain. The sound echoed across the area, and several people gasped. Someone's phone was already recording. Within hours, the clip hit social media. By the next morning, it was everywhere. Memes, remixes, commentary videos, slow-motion edits with dramatic music. The internet crowned it the Fountain Awakening. Jenna tried to plead that it was harassment, but the footage showed clearly that she had created the scene herself. Her attempt to control the narrative had transformed into pure comedy for the entire internet. By this stage, the drama was no longer tragic. It had become absurd. And Jenna was no longer a wronged victim in the public eye. She was a spectacle when she could no longer escape. Jenna's fall from grace didn't happen in a single moment. It was a slow, painful unraveling that reached its breaking point after the fountain incident went viral. Her family, especially her mother, could no longer pretend things were just misunderstandings or online exaggerations. They saw the panic in her eyes, the erratic behavior, the desperate attempts to regain control. And they finally stepped in. 2 days after the video spread across every platform, Jenna's parents arrived at her apartment without warning. They found her surrounded by half-burnt papers, crystals, candles, and stacks of notes she had written to herself, insisting she was being targeted. She tried to explain that she was preparing a comeback, planning a rebirth, but her words were scattered and frantic. Her mother broke down in tears, and her father quietly called a treatment center. Jenna didn't fight them. She didn't scream or protest. She was exhausted, emotionally, mentally, publicly exhausted. So when they told her she needed help, she simply nodded and let them guide her into the car. She spent the next 30 days in a facility known for helping people facing burnout, identity collapse, and emotional dysregulation. There, without the noise of social media, she began confronting the truth she had avoided for months. Counselors pushed her to look at her choices, not her narratives. Therapists asked questions she had never asked herself. And slowly, the layers she had built around her guilt and denial began peeling away. Meanwhile, outside the facility, the world moved on. People laughed at the fountain memes for a few days, and then shifted to the next trending drama. Her name faded from feeds, her videos stopped circulating, and her followers migrated elsewhere. By the time she was released, the internet had already forgotten her. But real life hadn't. Jenna returned home to find a termination letter from her company, citing conduct unbecoming of an employee representing the organization. Her church had asked her to take an indefinite break from group activities. The GoFundMe page had been closed permanently. And her social media profiles were restricted after multiple reports of misinformation and fraudulent fundraising. She tried reaching out to friends, but most didn't respond. Some gently told her they needed space. Others blocked her outright. She realized for the first time that she had lost more than reputation. She had lost trust. In that lonely spiral, she wrote a long, vulnerable letter to Ethan. She apologized for the lies, the accusations, the theatrics, the humiliating public stunts. She said she missed the stability he brought into her life and wished they could start over. She asked if they could talk, hoping for even the smallest chance of reconciliation. Ethan received the letter while sitting on a cafe patio with someone new, Emily. A quiet, grounded woman who valued peace more than drama. When he finished reading, he folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and set it aside. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. His life had finally returned to normal. The chaos was gone. He had found someone who didn't turn every disagreement into a spectacle or every emotion into a performance. For the first time in a long while, he felt calm. And as he watched Emily smile across the table, he realized something important. He hadn't escaped Jenna's drama. He had simply walked back toward the peace he always deserved. Ethan looked back on everything that had happened and realized the entire storm had started with a single, simple truth. He hadn't tried to expose anyone. He hadn't sought revenge or attention. He had only refused to carry the blame for something he didn't do. In the end, the truth had done all the work on its own. It unraveled the lies. It revealed the betrayals. It showed everyone who had been genuine and who had been performing. Ethan didn't feel triumphant. He just felt relieved. Life was quiet again, steady again, free from the constant chaos he never asked for. Emily brought him a kind of warmth he hadn't realized he was missing. There were no accusations, no hidden agendas, no dramatic scenes ready to ignite at any moment. Just peace. Meanwhile, Jenna faced the consequences she had spent months avoiding. Her world had shifted, not because Ethan fought her, but because she had built it on foundations that couldn't hold. As Ethan moved forward, he didn't look back. The drama had ended, the truth had settled, and his life finally made room for something better.